Good afternoon. I'm Nathan Fonseca. I'm a partner at CRS Insurance Brokerage. We're pleased to sponsor the Health and Safety Workshop. It's my pleasure to introduce Kristin White, who is here to facilitate today's workshop. Kristin is an attorney at Fisher Phillips, and Kristin is a partner at the firm here in Denver. She counsels and defends clients on regulatory workplace safety matters and often acts as crisis management counsel for employers across all industries. Kristin chairs the ASAC Health and Safety Committee and is the director of the Colorado Safety Association Board of Directors. Welcome, Kristin. Thank you for being here. Look forward to hearing everyone today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nathan. So thanks, everyone, for attending the workshop today. We've got some good speakers, presenters on this workshop. So we want to make this as interactive as we can, although I know if you're attending, you have to type in the chat. So if you have any questions or, want to add to the discussion, please just use the chat box. And, we want to try to make it as conversational as we can. So first, I'm going to just go around and have everyone introduce themselves, and who they are and what they do, and then we'll get started today. So Katie, do you want to start first? Just tell us a couple minutes of who you are.
Sure. Thanks. My name is Katie Guthmiller. I work with HealthLinks. HealthLinks is a program based at the Colorado School of Public Health. So we're really researchers in health and safety, and wanted to get into the organizational side of health and safety. And so we work with organizations to assess and advise on health and safety in the workplace. We do this through an assessment. So when someone enrolls in HealthLinks, they take this assessment, and then we can provide them with a healthy workplace certification if they reach a certain point. And then we do one-on-one advising as well. So any challenges that the organization is experiencing, we can work to help them through and set some goals for the year ahead. So that's a brief overview of HealthLinks, but could go on for a while.
Thank you. That was great. Cesar, do you want to go next?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I am Cesar Garcia. I work with Memco, a Texas-based company, and thank you for inviting me, first of all. And we specialize in staffing and payrolling within the construction industry. So we deal with everything from light industrial all the way out to your construction. So we deal with all the trades in between, far and wide. My specialty is in safety, of course. We deal with all the different types of subcontractors that are out there, general contractors. So I have a little variety under the belt as far as dealing with different kinds of trades and the safety regulations that go tied with them. Aside from that, we provide a broader view on the safety aspect. As some people like to specialize, we have to specialize in pretty much all the different fields that we interact with. So we have a broader specialization, I guess you could say. And so I've been doing it for a while now. We also take care of all of the workers' comp claims, claim management, and that comes from accidents, and we look into now, after things like that happen, how we can go back and prevent them from happening again, and helping the industry as well.
Great, thank you. Trish, do you want to go next? It's still not getting you off mute. See if I can unmute you. All right, well, Trish is going to trust me to do her introduction then while we're working to get her off mute. Mark and I, we could do a Trisha's introduction for her. So for those of you who don't know Trisha Ennis, she is Executive Director of the Colorado Safety Association. I've worked with Trish for a long time on safety matters, and I've had the privilege to work with her when she was at Holmes Murphy, and then now through the Colorado Safety Association. So Trish is my go-to person when I have safety questions or needs. So if you don't know her, she'd be a good person to meet and utilize Colorado Safety Association, who's also ASAC is a partner with Colorado Safety Association. Hopefully I did that justice, Trish. All right, Mark, we'll kick it over to you.
Great. Thank you, guys. Mark Ashby, Lead Impairment Training. Lead provides reasonable suspicion training to all levels of corporations, companies. At Buckley Air Force Base, providing training to the military. And if you see me getting distracted, I'm sorry. The F-16s are doing flyovers above my car right now at about 50 feet, so it's a little distracting. But now LEAD provides great training so you can identify problems early so that you can, in effect, rescue your employees and save all the problems that come along with impairment, the injuries, and the damage. So happy to be here. Hope I can help in any way.
Great. Thanks, Mark. So to get us started here today for the workshop, we really want to leave everyone or have you take away some concrete items to work with. And so I want to share here, see screen. Let's see here. Give me just a moment to save this. Okay. All right, so are you all, someone tell me, are we seeing the ASAC Health and Safety Program self-assessment?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, good. Good, I had to switch my screen back over. Okay, so what we see here is this is a safety assessment program that ASAC uses for its members when you want to apply for one of the safety awards. And so we thought this would be a good tool to talk through today. And I'm going to scroll down here and get us to the elements. We are not going to try to talk through every element in this program today. Otherwise, we'd be here all afternoon. Let me keep going. All right, so we are going to, but this is, I wanted everyone to see if I can get it all on the screen here. This is assessment that runs through letters A through T. That applying for one of the safety awards that you have to do for your business. And I've heard from some others that they've actually taken this assessment and used it to help their safety program. And so this is a document you can get from me, you can get from Deb, and she can provide it to you. But we have identified 3 different topics out of this entire list that we want to focus on today. And that we try to give you some concrete steps to take away for your business when you're looking at how do I evaluate our health and safety program? How do we determine if we're effective or not? So the first element that we're going to talk through, wrong screen here, is first we're going to start with A, employer commitment. And that's going to be the first thing that we talk about. And we've kind of set this up so that all of our presenters have got, a few points that they want to hit on these elements. We're going to talk through O, which is inspections. And then we're going to talk through T, which is record keeping. So those are the 3, that's our goals today. We'll see how far we get, but we want to start with A, employer commitment, because the idea from this group is if you don't have, management buy-in, you're not going to have a successful safety program. And, you've got to start there. So I'm going to let Katie kick us off today on employer commitment because she's got some, and Katie, is this where you wanted to share your screen as well? Because I'll stop sharing mine if you do.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks so much. I'm gonna
All right.
just get this up here. All right, perfect. That's a little bit small. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit. Okay, hopefully you can read that. But yeah, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking more about safety leadership. And as Kristin mentioned, this is just hugely important to your safety programs. And you may already know some of this, but I always think it's a really good opportunity to review this and maybe learn some things you didn't know before. So as Kristin said, it's really important that this does start at the top and that owners and leadership in the company is on board with safety and is dedicated to making sure everyone at all levels of the company are safe. That being said, I did want to start by saying that anyone and everyone can be safety leaders in an organization. So while it's important to start at the top, everyone from trainees to apprentices or experienced workers, anyone can be a safety leader. So I'll kind of go through some things that you can do to amplify your leadership skills. So the first is leading by example. Establishing safety expectations as a core value of the organization can be really important. Sharing your safety vision with team members, demonstrating a positive attitude about safety, which I think can sometimes be hard. There's a lot of different trainings you're doing and things like that, but keeping positive about it can make sure that others around you are positive about it as well. Walking the talk, which is really just saying, practice what you preach. If you're talking about safety and saying it's important, make sure that you are also following all of the safety protocols and enforcing that when you're on job sites as well. I won't spend too much time about leading up, but this is really talking about an employee's ability to actually kind of lead their boss. So if you're not somebody who's in a leadership position in your organization, that's okay. You can still have an impact on those above you by utilizing some of these tips. And then engaging and empowering team members. So explaining why safety is critical to getting the job done and engage team members in safety decision making. This is important because if an employee feels that they're involved in the process, they're going to understand why this is so important and be more dedicated to really getting it right and doing it right 100% of the time. Conducting daily morning safety huddles can be really great. You may be already doing this. A lot of organizations that we work with do this and really enjoy it. They'll sometimes incorporate stretching into that as well. We also work with an organization, RK Mechanical, who has done a lot of mental health work. And so they use that time in the morning to do a little check-in and just ask people how they're feeling, if there's anything going on in their personal lives that they wanted to bring up. And they found that actually by just creating that space for people to talk, really allowed people to open up and share things going on in their personal lives that they wouldn't have otherwise with coworkers. And so now they're a much closer team because of that. Also, it's important to empower team members to report safety concerns, injuries, and near misses, and report or fix hazards or unsafe situations, of course. So then moving on to actively listening and practicing three-way communication. So starting with active listening, this really means just treating team members with respect when they're speaking. Also paying attention to nonverbal cues like body language and making sure you maintain eye contact. And then one thing that I know we all struggle with, I know I personally struggle with, is listening to hear what's being said and not thinking about what you're going to say next. So really being engaged in what that person is bringing up and not just thinking about how you're going to respond or what the next step is. And then ask clarifying questions. So make sure that you're on the same page, even if you think you understood them, maybe repeat it back in a different way just to make sure that you're really understanding what's going on. And then kind of along those lines, three-way communication, you want to make sure you have the listener's attention, be direct and concise. And then really the key is having that team member repeat the message back. So this can be really useful if you're not in person and maybe communicating over a radio or something like that, just to make sure that they understood, have them repeat the message back, and then give them a confirmation that, yes, that's what I said, just to make sure that there are no misunderstandings there. And then in terms of coaching, what we're really talking about is observing a worker action, addressing the issue, problem solve, and then practice action. So instead of, maybe just bringing this up in a training, making sure that you're hands-on at the job site, making sure that people are doing things the way they're supposed to be doing them, and let them know if they're not, and then make sure that you watch them do it correctly and let them know that they're doing that correctly. So you want to describe the facts, explain the impact. Again, like I said earlier, getting employees involved in the decision-making can really help because they understand why this is so important, provide suggestions, and be timely. And then lastly, just wanted to note, it can be really impactful to recognize team members for doing a great job with safety. So making sure to give this recognition separate from other types of feedback. So it's just talking about, what they're doing at the job site safety wise. Regularly give praise in private and be specific about why you're praising the person. And then if the person's comfortable with it, give praise publicly too, because then that shows other people in your unit that, you're recognizing when they're doing a great job adhering to safety protocols. So just wanted to kind of run through those tips, and I'm happy to share this handout if anyone would like it, but that's what I had.
Great, thank you. Cesar or Mark, who wants to kind of jump in next with your thoughts on, maybe how, Cesar, for you, maybe how you've gotten employer buy-in and leadership buy-in for your organization?
I guess I can take it. Mark, you want to go, or I can step in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so man, and Katie, that was awesome. It's going to be very hard to follow that up. So thank you for setting the bar so high. So employer buy-in and commitment on our end really is, it's a huge important part of our relationship with them, right? We depend on them to keep our employees safe. So we encourage them to maintain a safe and healthful work environment. And we've developed many different ways of, I guess, following through and helping them get to that point. One of them is seeing a lot of people say, hey, I got hurt because, they were telling me that we needed to do this job and it needed to be done yesterday. And so there's always a sense of urgency attached to the production. And when you're rushing through something, when you're working and you work fast or you take shortcuts, accidents happen, right? And so we have to stop everything and reevaluate the situation and say, okay, this is where things fell through. And so a lot of the times we have to realize that safety goes hand in hand with production, and production goes hand in hand with money, right? You complete the project on time, or you complete it early, you get your bonuses, you save costs. So how do we tie that to how it's going to affect your bottom line? And so aside from looking at the obvious, which is when somebody gets hurt, you have to stop work because you have to now investigate the accident. You have to follow up and do a stand down about the accident to, let everybody know what happened and try to prevent that again. And then you have follow up after that. You have to make sure that things are still rolling. So production is stopped by not being safe. So if we try to be proactive and prevent it before it happens, then you prevent a lot of that loss of production. And so outside of that obvious, the pain and suffering for the employee, lost time, then we look at how it affects your costs. You have insurance you got to worry about, right? Certain claims can go and affect your premium at the end. So when you got to re-up the next year, your premium is going to go up. You have your lost time, so it can affect your ability to work, to bid for future work or jobs. And so a lot of people don't realize that by not being safe, you're potentially exposing yourself to those things in the future. And so you educate employers that way. And then you show them the importance of just being a mindful employer, right? You want to take care of your employees because they'll take care of you back. So that's how we've kind of connected with them, as far as like, okay, it's gonna affect your costs, but it's also gonna save you in the long run. So I'm just kind of looking over my points here. And Katie, you took a lot of my thunder. A lot. Well, like, okay,
Yeah, we should have coordinated.
what was she already not covered so that I can go in there? And she had a good point, which was when you have management buy-in, there's also involvement of your operations, right? Everybody else feels appreciated when you make them a part of what you're doing, when you involve them. And sometimes they have the best solutions to the problems. They're the people that will, if given the trust to do so, they will come to you when you have those morning meetings with them, they start opening up and they start building that trust and that relationship with their foremans, with their supervisors. They become comfortable voicing their concerns and their opinions, and sometimes those things are really what you're looking for as far as safety. You're like, okay, he brought a point of view that we weren't even looking at. So when you have those things, it goes a long way when you start building your trust and your relationship with your employees. So as an employer, you have to have a really open mind about letting people, in a sense, judge your safety and health program, right? Because nobody's is perfect. We've all have gaps in them. You just got to figure out what the gaps are and where you can step in and fill them. And like I said, it's a team effort. It's from the ground all the way up. And you have to hold your upper management accountable for it as well. You have to have accountability somewhere in there. So aside from the praises and all that, you also have to have distinct written the responsibilities for those people, because otherwise you won't have the follow through. You can tell somebody you have to do this, but unless there comes some kind of consequence to not doing it, they will not do it. They will go with what's easiest, the easiest path, the path with the least resistance. And normally that's not always the safest path. So we have to define the clear distinction between this is what you have to do, and with time people warm up to that. They see the benefits. Obviously it's a slow process, because if your culture is not one to heavily rely on safety, the people are hesitant to the new rules, to I have to worry about wearing this new item, or I have to follow this new rule. But with time they start seeing the results of, okay, if I do this, then maybe I cut 10, 20 minutes from my, tasks. So they start warming up to it. And then before you know it, it just becomes second nature to them. But along with that, then you also have to come in and educate them on how to do it properly. You have to provide education. You have to be open and willing to go out above and beyond to find somebody that specializes in that, and have an individual within your company to be dedicated to that specific subject matter, in this case, safety and health, so that they know, okay, we expect our employees to follow these regulations, these rules, but you also
Cesar, I think you froze on.
you have to understand it. If you don't understand it, you're gonna go
We
through
got
the
you back
motions,
at
and
the
it's
end.
not really gonna change anything.
We can hear you now. You just froze there for
Uh-oh.
a second.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, my it blinked in and out, and I was like, uh-oh. But okay. So with education, you start also realizing where you're falling short, where your gaps are, and what you need to do to fill those gaps. So once you have that, then it ties in with other stuff. Like you said, we're going to go on to record keeping, and we're going to talk about that, right? So I won't go into that just yet, but management does have to have buy-in, and they have to believe that safety is the better course.
No, that was great. I was thinking about,
themselves as
you
well.
use the word, finding your gaps, and that's really what this assessment form that ASAC uses to me is the, what helps you find those gaps. And, Mark, I was thinking for you, Cesar said, training and how that plays in with management buy-in. What would you add to that?
Thank you. I was at a safety training with Dave Ruddy. Many of you know him yesterday. And the owner of the company, the buy-in from the top down, the owner of the company got a refund check from the insurance company and equally shared it amongst all of the employees and cut each one a check for a large amount of money because their safety paid off. They had direct result in that. It was their efforts and their policies and their commitment that caused them to get that money back in the first place. And they shared it directly with all the employees. That made a huge impact on me. But we need to empower supervisors to make sure that they can make the decisions that they need to do, and then support them when they actually do. That would be one of the things that I took from Katie most, is that we really got to support, the people and the rules that we put in place, and the consistency will attract good employees. The consistency will keep you from having problems because people know exactly what's going to happen in certain situations. So it's almost a win-win situation at that point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Trish, anything else that you add to this on the employer responsibility kind of management buy-in piece?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, that's great. And feel free if you want to add anything with your introduction. So
Oh, sorry about that. I had to restart my whole computer. I think from a lot of the stuff that Cesar and Mark and Katie, everybody has said, the good high points on management accountability, I guess I would add that it should really be a value of the company and not an extra thing that you have to do, because whenever safety is an extra thing, it might be the thing that doesn't get done. And I see that in organizations that call us for safety training and say, well, can you just be on standby and do it on a snow day? Or we're going to bring the guys in on a Saturday, and they're not willing to actually stand down and do what they need to do for safety training and safety initiatives. The other thing I think is, rewarding people for doing it right, and the whole incentive of, reprimanding people for doing it wrong. But one of the things is setting out the expectations to all levels of management throughout the organization. And so when you allocate losses back against a project, for example, and part of the performance review for the project team is performance of safety and attendance at safety meetings and things like that, then it doesn't just become a scorecard for the workers, but it's something that is recognized as part of the overall project quality. Because a lot of times your losses are just out of the general budget. They're not allocated back against the project. And you may have a project superintendent who's great, gets everything done on time and under budget, until you start factoring in the accidents that may have happened. And suddenly you see maybe that project wasn't so profitable after all, and it's not just about productivity. So those are a few comments I would make.
no, that's great. I appreciate that. And that's one of the things, let me share that the assessment again here. Let's see here. We just take, okay. It's one of the things when you're looking at the different elements, is that so many of these work together. And so when you're doing your safety audit and you look at this list and you're going to think, oh my gosh, this is such a huge list. They really do work together. And I think that comes out in our comments here is that, when you're getting employer commitment, part of that is that employee buy-in that goes in with it, which is something you're going to evaluate here. So, but I really do, I appreciate the comments here. I really think that employer commitment is your place to start. Because if you don't have that buy-in, you're not going to get support for the rest of the elements here and what you need. All right, so let's kick us down to, we're going to go to O, and feel free as well. Anyone here on the panel or anyone that's listening, if you have questions and you specifically about one of these items, please ask it. So we just kind of highlighted, certain ones today, but we're happy to talk about others, or if you have questions or the points you want to make. But we were going to go down to O, inspections, and the role that plays, and I'll kick us off here, because that's one of the things that when I get involved, which a lot of times is, after something's happened, occasionally we're brought in on the front end, hopefully to help with program review and help things not go wrong. But many times we're brought in after something has gone wrong, from the workplace safety side as an attorney. And, I immediately go to, okay, where's your inspection forms? Where's your safety audits? What's actually happening on your job site? And, the companies that can start producing that paperwork, to me, it makes such a difference. And we see what they were looking at. So, kick this over to our, who'd like to maybe start with this one, of kind of your advice for our, for those attendees about, what should they look for when they're trying to evaluate their safety program along inspection lines? You know, what kind of gaps should they be looking for? Or maybe what kind of inspections should they be doing at a minimum? You know, I think there's different levels you can do. So yeah, who'd like to start with this one?
I wouldn't mind starting with this one. You know, one of the observations I've made over the years doing inspections for contractors who are customers or, you know, business partners is that we tend to do the inspections and we find the same things over and over again on their projects. And so I would say the key thing that I would recommend for any kind of inspection program is that you have a plan for what you're going to do with the information you get from an inspection. Because if you're having your safety professional or your third party come out and do an inspection on different job sites around the country or around the state or around the city, whatever it is, and you find the same things over and over again, then you're not taking the information and actually using it to change your operation and pre-plan, because that was part of that, you know, commitment and pre-planning your project. So, you know, I worked with a general contractor for a while. It's like every project I went out to, I found unprotected skylights on the roof where they were working. And I finally said, I'm wasting your time and your money by coming out and doing these inspections because you're not taking the information and pre-planning the job so that you can address this and not have it happen. Then we have to stop, shut down, retrain, fix the problem every single time we find it. And so how do you use your inspections to become a learning organization, I guess would be my advice.
Oh, there we go. No, that's really true, Trish. And I was thinking from a legal perspective, you know, those are the things that keep me up at night, right? Is when they have, you know, professionals like yourself come out and you tell them what's wrong and then they don't get fixed. And then either someone gets hurt or we end up with a citation because now we've got evidence that we knew about it and didn't do anything with it. So that's even worse than not knowing, you know. So from a legal side, you know, it's different. I mean, from a safety perspective, you want to know, but so you've got to know what you're going to do with it. Yeah, because if you don't, it's even worse. So Cesar, do you want to jump in next? Because I know from your perspective, this is probably something you deal with day in and day out as well.
Yes, this is actually one of those things where like I could go on and talk about it for forever. So there are two aspects, and you both kind of like mentioned it. So you have the inspection that comes before stuff happens, before things happen, and then you have the inspections that come post accidents, and they each have their own, I guess, meaning. You know, the reason for it. My main focus is trying to get to the proactive inspections, going out and when you're doing inspections. So it's about building rapport with your employees. Okay, it goes back to that management buy-in and commitment, right? When you build a safer culture, people are more comfortable speaking with you. So when you do that, bless you, Kristin. When you do that, they're more comfortable speaking with you. And the best way of finding out what's wrong is really from the people being exposed. So obviously we know what we're looking for. So you do go out there and you look for the common hazards. Anybody that has any kind of safety training knows that the first thing that you look is for hazards. You identify hazards and then you find a solution to how to either eliminate them, which is what you're hoping to do. And if you can't eliminate them, how you can lower the risk of being exposed to that hazard. And then lastly, we save PPE for last. So when we're out there doing an inspection, we try to identify the hazards. And this is a really great point that Katie made earlier, which was having the employees actually demonstrate that they can do things safely or show you that they know what you're asking them, right? Getting that positive feedback from them. So when you go out there, you don't want to be pointing it out. You want to know if they know, because they're the ones being exposed to it. And so they're the ones that are going to be able to recognize it if they come upon it. So we try to relate it to where we ask them, hey, can you tell me what the hazards related to your tasks and activities are? And so that's how you gauge where they are, where they fall in that category of like, okay, how well aware are they of their hazards and their surroundings? And that's kind of where you find the gaps. Like, okay, we're missing this. Like, fall protection is a huge thing. They don't know the different types of fall protection that they could be using, or different controls to either eliminate or litigate those hazards. So you find a lot by just asking and having conversations with your employees. Like, that's the easiest way that you can complete an inspection, is just by having an honest, open conversation with them. And then of course you have to follow up with paperwork. Hey, we cover this, this, and this. These are the issues that we have found, and these are going to be our solutions. How are we going to eliminate these hazards, right? You come up with a plan on how you're going to actually go in and fix them. And there's a lot of things that you can fix on the spot. You can say, hey, we can do this right now to fix this. But there are other things, just like Trish was saying, you may go to a company that has different branches all over, right? And you may be finding the same issue all the way. So then you have to take a deeper look into, okay, where are we falling short, and why is it that we're having this issue company-wide? So then you have to start looking at how you can standardize your procedures and protocols to cover those gaps, to make sure that everybody is on the same page. If you're a specialty contractor, you know that you're always going to be exposed to pretty much the same hazards with what you do, with the exception of maybe project specific hazards that you may be exposed to around because of other subs. But aside from that, if you already know you specialize in something, you should be an expert in the hazards that you are day to day being exposed to. And then again, encouraging the education and the awareness for your employees to also be able to even they themselves can eliminate the hazards without having to come to anybody else, right? You make them competent people. And so when you have competency, then you have a safer work.
No, very true. Cesar, we might
You're looking at
froze on us
root
just
cause
for a second.
analysis.
Go ahead. You froze on us just for a second.
Oh, sorry. That was just the proactive inspections. If I'm going to touch up on the other one, the post-accident inspections that we're looking at, you have to do a very thorough, inventory, right, of where you've fallen short. And that's where you're really put on the spot, because then you really have to come up with solutions to problems that were now exposed, and you may not have known that were there. So you have to go through the root cause analysis and put in all the factors that were a part of why the accident happened and how it happened. And so you have to really take a hard, long look at that inventory and really cover those bases. And don't like to be a part of those, but of course, we've all been there. But that's why my main focus is trying to go with that proactive route. If you can avoid it, if you can stop it from happening, then you don't have to worry about the rest. But it's always good to be prepared.
Hold on, let me check. Back on mute. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Nope.
Mark or Katie, do you want to jump in? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying I can hear you.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Hey,
All right,
Kristin,
Mark or Katie.
I wanted to add that with inspections, we need to inspect our policies and our procedures at least on a yearly basis too. We want to go over things just to make sure that it's not antiquated, that it's not. I had a customer recently that still allowed people to show up to work with alcohol in their systems per company policy. And although it was a low number, we don't want to advocate those things anymore. That's, something that may have been a part of past language. So my piece on this would be inspection would be just to make sure that we're still doing things the way that we should be, that we're using proper terminology, proper language.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good point. Yeah. That's one of the things when we deal with OSHA inspections, you get asked your HAZCOM policy, where's your fall protection policy? And a lot of times we'll have the wrong names in those policies of guys who haven't been at the company for years. And that's like a huge red flag to OSHA that, okay, you actually haven't pulled this policy out in a while. And are you really training people on it? So yeah, that's a really good really good point there. Katie, anything that you wanted to add on inspections? I know it's a little bit outside of what you all deal with day to day, but
Yeah, we're a little bit further away from the on-the-job inspections, so I think everybody covered it really well.
okay, great. Well, our next item then is record keeping, and we've talked a little bit about that. Record keeping is, what I think list, and that's why we wanted to kind of start at the beginning and the end here, because at the end of the day, you've got to have all this paperwork and what that looks like and how are you documenting it. Most of you probably heard, if it's not documented, it didn't happen, which is the way it gets treated a lot of times, right? Especially when it comes to, going to court and what do I have to prove. So it does make it a little more difficult. But yeah, who would like to, jump in and maybe see some, I'm thinking here, record keeping, maybe some tips for the attendees about ways to track all this information, right? Because that's, it's a lot, right? Because this, you're trying to not only get the work done, and now we're saying make sure you get all these inspections done, but then you've got to keep track of it. So any tips for those that are out there in the field trying to actually manage this kind of program?
I'll just throw it in there. And nowadays with technology is playing a huge part in the industry. So finding a good software provider that can consolidate all your training records and your inspection forms, your first aid, your I don't know what's the word I'm looking for here. Your near misses, sorry. There are softwares out there and there are companies that are willing to work with you to customize. I'm sorry about that. Customize software to your needs, what you're looking for, what you need to work on. And so that's a great way of keeping it all in one place. Obviously, you always want to have a hard copy somewhere. So again, it falls on that individual in charge of keeping track of those things to stay on top of it. But technology is a huge help. And it's something that we're going to start seeing more of as we move forward with time as well.
No, that's a great point. Great point. Trish, is there anything that you all recommend when people come to you and say, how do I do this? How do I get started?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like the idea of technology because I think anything you can do to make it more efficient and easier to document things on the job site is going to be helpful. So instead of putting it in an app and then having to go back and recreate it in a spreadsheet and then having to touch the information 3 or 4 times before you have it and in that hard copy form can be challenging. So investing in some technology, and also a lot of times your field people, especially as we get younger people in the trades, they're pretty conversant with these things and they've got them and they can do a lot by taking photos and things. I guess I would say, much like our focus on recognition for doing things right and employee culture and making safety a value, is also to capture the things that are going right. When you're going out and you're doing an inspection, instead of just focusing on what are the deficiencies and what do we need to fix, let's focus on what they're doing right and say, why is this project so successful and how can we do more of this? And then I think you start doing that more and having fewer issues as you go. And we don't always focus on that. So I always try and start with everything I found that was right on the project and why it's a good practice before I hit on opportunities for improvement. And not only does that increase your buy-in for your people because they feel like you're not just out there looking for something wrong, but it helps you identify those leading indicators for a successful job.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good point. That's really, I think that makes a big difference. And, they see you as a helpful partner, right? And less the policeman who's out, telling them what they might be doing wrong. Which, speaking of policemen, Mark, I'm going to kick it to you as our former policeman. Any thoughts you've got on record keeping that you may give in your trainings to some of your clients?
No, thank you for that. The longest I went on a potential litigation was 5 years from the time of an incident to the time where it actually we were driving to the court and they settled as court opened on that beginning day of trial. You know, in 5 years you go back and you can't remember anything in 5 years, no matter how traumatic or how significant the event was. So obviously just keeping good detailed records and then following up on that and putting timelines on it so that your supervisors and everybody else turn in reports in a timely fashion. We got to be careful when we accuse people of violations so that we actually have the data to say, hey, on this date you were late, on this date you were injured, on this date you damaged equipment. So if we're going to bring a case against somebody, we really have to make sure we've crossed our T's and dotted our I's. You never know if it's a year, 2 years, or in this case 5 years down the road where it became something that almost became a big deal. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that made me think too, when you mentioned that accountability piece. You know, I think Katie had mentioned when she opened us up about, holding people accountable and, leading by example. And a lot of that is, that when things go poorly or people violate, especially safety violations, that you issue discipline and you issue that consistently. So, I think that's a really important point.
And I actually like to add on to what Mark said about keeping that record keeping. And sometimes those little minute things that we forget over time that were documented can either break or make a claim. And so it's really important. You don't know the huge difference that it could make to say, hey, look, somebody took this picture or somebody noted this, and that right there changes everything. So it is very important to have some sort of record.
Yeah, I would say from the picture standpoint too, working in the insurance industry for a while, we would get pictures of an auto incident, and it would be, the broken windshield or the broken headlight or a picture of the other car's license plate. And it's this microcosm of the whole accident. And so making sure that you are getting pictures that kind of show the whole environment and then narrow into the details. Don't just take a picture of the broken glass on the street and keep that as your record. And then remembering also that there's no depth perception in a picture. And I was on an OSHA issue with a contractor once, and OSHA's showing this picture saying, look, they're within 3 feet or whatever of the power lines, because the picture was the heavy equipment and the power lines. But if you took the picture from a different perspective, you could see that it was actually more like 500 yards. You know what I mean? It was, you so take the picture from a couple of different angles as well to show sort of scale and depth perception so that you don't get trapped in something that, to Mark's point, 3 to 5 years later, you don't even remember the details.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. And that's part of on this checklist when they talk about kind of, accident investigations. Yeah, that becomes really important. So we've got just a little over 5 minutes here. I wanted to just, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw up this checklist. And then while I'm doing that, I think I'll just ask each of our panel members here, they've got just a couple minutes of, closing remarks. If anyone's got any questions or comments that's attending, please feel free to put those up in the chat, and we will address those as well. But just give everybody a couple minutes. If you can either, summarize what we've been talking about here, or if there's other items that you want to point out as well, then feel free to do that. I'll leave this up here and give everybody just a couple minutes of wrap up, and like I said, that way if we have any attendees that want to add anything as well, feel free to do so.
Kristin, I was just going to add, we're a total worker health center of excellence. So I always want to pitch total worker health when I have a minute. So we're all about the integration of health and safety, which, typically those things are pretty siloed, but through research, there's been just tons and tons of evidence that health really does impact safety, things like mental health, sleep, chronic disease. So, safety is absolutely first. If you feel like you're getting to a really good spot with safety, I definitely encourage you to start with maybe an employee needs and interest survey and just see what challenges they may be having or what types of programming they might be interested in. And that's kind of one way that you can start to kind of incorporate some of that health and safety.
No, that's great. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Katie. Cesar, you want to go next? Give us just a couple minutes of wrap up from you.
Sure. And as a safety representative, I think that there for a while back, and it's starting to slowly shift away from that, but there was a long time negative stigma related to safety. You think of the safety guys like, oh, here comes this guy. He's gonna make me do this, or he's gonna make me do that, right? And a lot of the times, it's just not the understanding of where we come from and why we do what we do. And so I realized when people don't know or don't understand, there comes a fear, right? You fear the unknown. And so when you fear the unknown, you also come to, and I'm going to use a strong word, but you also come to hate it, right? When you fear something, you hate it. And so when you start taking that away, when you start educating people and teaching them and being a part of, or showing them why being a part of it is important, not just to them, but to everybody around them, you start taking that fear away, and you start, changing them and changing the way that they look at things. So you start shedding a little bit of light in some places where maybe there's still some darkness. And so it can go a long way by just a simple conversation, and you don't have to be more knowledgeable than the other person in other subjects. Just have to know how to talk to some people and educate in the subject matter that you're actually speaking. And so education is a huge part of safety, and I will always advocate it. And it covers everything. I mean, you're talking about inspections, training, accident investigations, everything that's on your list right there. There's some sort of educational program out there that teaches you how to cover it. And so that's my wrap up talk right there.
No, that was great. Trish made a comment over here about the conversations between the GC and the owner and even the subs, that pre-planning for job site safety, letter H up there. That's one of the items here when you're looking for your gaps, to be aware of. So yeah, that's a great point. So Mark, we'll kick it to you, and then Trish will take us home.
All right, thank you. Hey, with the pandemic still going strong right now and everything going on, safety has taken a huge movement into the forefront, I think, at a lot of companies and businesses. And I think we should continue to build upon that momentum and keep safety in the forefront. Continue to look for our employees and care for our employees, and just keep moving forward with this momentum. And that's the word I want to end with there, is that we're going to use this to make things better. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity today.
Yeah.
That's a great point, Mark. I think, and I particularly like the whole total worker health approach as well. And I don't know, Katie said safety comes first, and when you get that handled, you can start focusing on the health. But I think the two really do go hand in hand. And I think, the health piece is people showing up ready to work. It's the substance abuse. It's in the construction trades. We know that suicide is a big problem. Couple that with the pandemic and people's fear. It just, we're in a unique position as occupational safety and health professionals and as business owners in this construction industry to care for our employees and to have that conversation with them, to let them know that really it's a package deal. We care about you. We're not the police. Sorry, Mark. We're and we really do want to be in a supportive position and focus on the whole person. So I really think the total worker health is the path forward for having those conversations with our employees.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. That's great. Well, I really appreciate all the panel members here today. I mean, we've got such a broad range of experience, and hopefully for those attending the session, this has been helpful for you to understand, at least from this safety assessment that we've been looking at here, that there's just so many different ways to tackle it, but hopefully we've given you some ideas here of ways to start and where to start, and how to start identifying those gaps and really, building, the kind of that first-class safety program. So thanks to everybody on our panel. Nathan, I'm going to kick it back to you. But no, this has been great. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you everyone for being on the panel. I think there was a lot of good information shared here, and obviously wanted to keep that safety culture top of mind. Being an insurance broker, that's something that we stress on a regular basis. And we rely on individuals like yourselves to really execute that culture for our clients. So thank you so much for everything that you do. I don't have any more further comments. We're kind of winding down. A couple sessions left here at Substrong, so be sure to attend those. And then the closing remarks will be right at 3:30. So thanks for everyone for being here, and hopefully see you later today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Nathan.